smile or something.
I'm Esther May Postgate Tarn, and my aunt, Olive Bicker Graham, has been visiting us, and we're so happy to have you here, Aunt Olive.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here with you.
How now? You've been to California before.
Yes, I have.
How is this your fourth visit? Fifth?
Probably. I'm not sure.
You
But
you
I've been here quite a few times
you came to visit.
before I even knew you.
You came to visit in San Diego
That's right.
in 1925.
Yes.
And then you came again in 1961 to visit your sister. 1962. 1961. You came to visit your sister Adeline, and you spent some time with us in this house.
Yes.
And this is your third consecutive winter
That's right.
come here. So that adds up to 5 visits.
Hmm.
You like the sunshine.
Oh, yes.
What do you like about California the most? You told me.
I told you.
The trees,
The trees.
the palm.
Oh, the palm trees, the hedges, how high they grow. They're just little, I know.
Well, I really want you to talk about you, not California.
Oh, I see.
About who were your parents?
My parents were Elizabeth Bachman, and she married Samuel Bicker, and my father was Samuel August Bicker.
What did he do?
He was a salesman.
And what did he sell?
He sold the coffee, tea, and spices. And he was a very good salesman, receiving honors and so forth.
And how many were in your family?
There were 6, 4 children, and my parents.
And in what were the names of your brothers and sisters?
The eldest was Esther,
Who was my mother?
who was your mother. That's right, my sister. And Adeline, and Olive, myself, and Arthur, my little brother,
And where did you live? Where did you grow up?
in Woodland Avenue, north side Pittsburgh.
And then
Then we moved to Davis Avenue.
1505 Davis Avenue.
That's right. And we lived there until I was married.
Was it a little house?
No, it was a very large house. Very large.
Describe the house.
It was a beautiful brick house, had really 3 stories, because the 3rd story you would never call an attic, because there were 3 large rooms on the 3rd floor. And the 2nd floor had 5 rooms. There was, it could have been made into an apartment. It was quite large. And 3 rooms were adjoining, and 1 room my mother used as a sewing room. And there was then the room above the dining room was used as a bedroom, and a room above the kitchen was a bedroom. We had a lot of company, so we used all of the rooms.
Well, I remember as I was growing up, my mother said that oftentimes people would come to stay with you, like her Uncle Frank, Grandma Vickers' brother came.
We always had someone.
When they came, they had grown up on a farm in Saxonburg, and they'd come into Pittsburgh and they'd stay with you.
Yes, that's right.
And
so we always had many people in our house, a lot of company.
And sometimes they even had strange guests that you didn't know. I mean, that you had told me how there were extra rooms, and sometimes your mother would rent out a room.
Oh, yes, she did that. Because after Adeline married and moved away, We had more room than we needed, so we rented rooms. We rented the little sort of a compartment up there. The three rooms that were joining made a lovely little apartment for a young couple.
And okay, now um, my mother used to tell me that not only were there guests in the house, but there were always guests to the house. And I remember, not, I never saw the house when you people lived there, but my mother would drive me past and show me the house where
Oh,
they had
yes.
so many happy memories.
That's right.
And there was a very large, deep, wide front porch.
Yes, a
And
very large. There was a
you,
vestibule, a beautiful vestibule.
I guess, you Bicker girls, from what I heard, always had a lot of beaux
Frequently. Yeah,
who would come to visit.
that's right.
And
Oh, yes, and my mother loved them too. She would sit and talk with them.
and I have heard the story of how my mother was always late in dressing because she was as a fastidious dresser.
Especially to her hair. That's what took the time.
And I've heard how one time you she wasn't ready,
I know
and
what you're going to say.
well, you tell the story.
Oh, yes. She was always late. Her boyfriend had called for her, and she wasn't ready. Well, he got fed up with that a little bit. And so he said, the next time I come and you're not ready, I am taking olive out. All right, the next time he came, she was not ready. And so he did take me, but just for fun. And we walked around the square, the block as we called it, a couple of times, and then came back, and she was as mad as a hornet.
What were the personalities like of your sisters and you when you?
Well, Adeline was always full of fun and life. Esther was studious. Esther was always at the book. Adeline was my mother's right-hand bar at cooking and cleaning and so forth. Esther was just at books.
What about you?
I don't know. I was Olive.
Um,
I was the lady.
Adeline, I hear, was always a tomboy. I was always told when I grew up that I looked like you but took after Aunt Adeline because I was a tomboy. And I heard the story of how she um, scandalized everybody by riding on the back of a motorcycle.
That was out in the country. Out in the country.
And also I remember once when your mother was expecting friends, the Hoax, to come to visit.
Yes.
And she had you all dressed up in white dresses to be ready for the Hoax to come to visit.
She always had us in white. Well, there was some color, but our good dresses were always white.
But what happened when Aunt Adeline, when the Hoax came and Aunt Adeline wasn't there? Was it the Hoax? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it wasn't the Hoax, but somebody was coming to visit, and there was some new construction going across the street.
Well, yeah, they were building. When we moved there wasn't a house around, and there were restrictions that they had to have. It had to be brick. Of course, we were going to. My father was going to build a brick house, regardless of what the the restrictions were. So, what was I saying now?
Well, I was trying to lead you into the story of the three sisters all being dressed up to receive company, and then when the company came, Aunt Adeline was nowhere to be found, and she was greeting the people walking up the street.
I don't remember.
See, here
that.
I'm telling the story and I don't know it. You know it because you told it to me. How she had climbed up into the scaffolding of the building across the street. Didn't
she climbed up the telegraph pole? But
she did.
Yes, she did that.
Well, this. Okay, I thought she climbed up into the scaffolding of the building across the
She
street.
may have.
Well,
She
maybe it
was,
was the telephone pole, so I have it
but
all
I can
wrong.
see her doing it, climbing the telegraph pole.
Tell what events stand out in your life? How did you meet Uncle Bill?
I'm happy to tell you how I met Uncle Bill. It was, it started on a Friday. Our next door neighbor was going to Conneaut Lake and asked Esther if she wouldn't like to go along. Now, I will say this. Now, there was tragedy in our home before that. My little brother was drowned just before that time. And Esther thought that was nice. She accepted the offer and asked me to go along. Well, I guess I was selfish. I wasn't even thinking of my poor father. And he was all alone shortly after my brother died. And of course, my mother had died before. And there we left, and my father was alone. Well, he wasn't alone very long. He went to the country to visit there were four brothers, and they were very close brothers. They loved one another dearly. So he went to visit his brother for the weekend. When we came home, I was happy to know that where he had gone, that he wasn't alone.
But tell us about that weekend at Conneaut Lake.
Oh, in Conneaut Lake. Esther was slow in dressing, yes, especially in primping her hair. So this neighbor that had taken her said, "Well, while Esther is fussing with her hair, let us just get in the car and ride around and see the place." So we did, and we passed the Conneaut Hotel. On the porch of the Conneaut Hotel sat some people, and one of them was a young man who was sitting there. His name was Bill. And the man who brought us to Conneaut Lake, his name also was Bill. So these Bills exchanged hellos. Hello, Bill. Hello, Bill. So the one on the porch came down to visit the one in the car where I was sitting. And that is how I met Uncle Bill. Then that afternoon, they went swimming. I didn't have a swimming suit, but my sister Esther had. And she was out swimming with this young man that I kind of liked. And that made me kind of cross. So I saw a friend of mine. I didn't know she was coming there or was there at all, but I just happened to see her, my very dear friend, Alma Noose. And she just came out of the water. I said, "Alma, take that suit off and give it to me." So I stepped into Alma's wetsuit just so I could be with Esther and this young man. And that was fun. That's how I met Bill. Then in the evening, he asked me to go dancing, and we went dancing. And so he had just come, probably that day or maybe the day before, but he had come to spend a couple of weeks for his vacation. Well, we were going home on Monday because Esther was bridesmaid to her best friend's wedding, which had taken place on Wednesday, and Esther had to go home Monday for the rehearsal. Well, I had asked her to stay because I wanted to stay a little longer. So to please me, it was real sweet of her. She stayed until Tuesday. So we went home then on Tuesday, but that's how I met Bill. Oh, this is what I wanted to say. Bill had gone there with the expectation of spending a week or two. Well, the day after I got home, the phone rang, and who was it? None other than Bill. He didn't stay any longer than I did, and he came home and asked for a date.
And then things proceeded from there.
And yes, and then he said he wanted to know if I was going with anyone. I said, "Yes, I am, Herman Smith." And he said, "Well, now I want every Wednesday and Saturday and Sunday with you." And that left poor Herman with what was left. So Bill got his way.
I don't think Herman stood much of a chance.
No, he didn't. And this is what poor Herman said. I wish you had never gone to Conneaut.
But you and Uncle Bill were married in 19...
25.
And how many years were you married?
We were married 56 years.
So the year that you met him was 1919?
1919, in that year 1919.
1919. And you were married 56 years.
That's right.
And you have a daughter.
I have a daughter, June.
And June has a family.
And June has a family of 4 children.
And so how many grandchildren? You have 4 grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
Yes, we do. We have a darling little great-great-grandchild. I have a picture here.
You have 2 great-grandchildren.
Little boy and girl. That's right.
Okay, how did my mother meet my father? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that. Of course, I wasn't there, but very clearly. My sister Esther taught school. She married a man by the name of George Postgate. He was supervisor of the schools in that section of Pennsylvania.
Of physical education.
Of physical education. And one of the schools that he was attending happened to be my sister. And that is how he met my sister at that school.
Now, he was a widower at the time.
Yes, he was a widower.
With 3 children.
That's right.
I understand Mother was actually attached in some, engaged, I don't know, was she engaged or just interested in another young man?
Well, she had been going with this other young man, yes. Very nice young man.
So he was the Herman Smith to my mother. He lost out.
That's
to
right.
my
He
daddy.
lost out. That's right. Mm-hmm.
How did Aunt Adeline meet
Uncle John?
Uncle John?
Well, really that marriage took place through my mother. She liked him because Adeline was a very likable person, and she had more, I don't know that she even had any girlfriends, but her friends were all boyfriends. And she was just a little, she was happy-go-lucky, and the boys all liked her. And they had a lot of fun playing together. So anyway, now how did you, well, that's how your mother met your father, through the schools.
Yes, but how did Aunt Adeline meet Uncle John? Do you remember that?
Well, I'm trying to think now. He was
a student at the Western Theological Seminary.
He was, yes, he had gone there. He had finished high school. He was a very bright man. Finished high school in 3 years. And then he went to the seminary and was there 3 years. So,
But Grandma Bicker, my grandmother, whom I never met because she died before, many years
My
before
mother.
I was born. Yes.
that's my mother, yes.
But she was impressed with the fact that he was a minister.
That's right. She thought, well, here Adeline has a minister, and he'll kind of tame her down, and she was so happy.
She was worried about Aunt Adeline being the tomboy.
That's
so
right.
She wanted someone to
That's
get
right.
her in line.
That's right. Sometimes mothers always aren't right, though.
When my mother was going with my father, I've always been told that he was very persistent. She thought he was a nice gentleman, but she was still interested in this other man, George Lavender.
George Lavender, yes, indeed.
And
I almost forgot about him. We met him during the First World War. He had come on.
Okay, that's right. You girls were all growing up during the First World War.
That's right.
In Mother's photograph albums. There are so many pictures
Oh,
of you
yes.
girls with fellas in
With soldier
uniform,
boys, that's
with
right.
soldier boys. But then when Mother married Daddy, he kept coming over to the house, and Mother used to tell me how he would he would come over even when she was going out with George Lavender, and he'd just sit and spend the evening talking to your father
Yes, or to me,
until finally he managed to push George Lavender out of the picture.
Yes, but George Lavender what's his name, George? Let me see, Lavender. Lavender,
Was it Stuart Lavender?
Stuart Lavender.
Stuart. Okay,
Yes,
it
he
was.
was. Yes, he was very
I'm
from New York.
not
He
George.
was a very lovely man. Yes, we liked him.
Well, my mother married my dad, and they raised his three children, and then I came along.
Yes.
And then my cousin June, your daughter, and Aunt Adeline had one daughter. Three sisters grew up, and each one had one daughter.
That's true. It's a little strange as it may seem. Yes.
And I think that June and I always felt June was like a sister to me. Because Mother and you would visit back and forth across Pittsburgh so much.
Yes.
And I always felt very, very close to June. Well, now do you have anything that you would like to say before we say goodbye to the television
Well,
camera?
there's just so much because we lived a full life. We certainly did. And my mother died very young. She looked forward to the time when her girls would marry, and she would have. She had planned nice, lovely wedding for all of us because a friend of hers had come to work in Pittsburgh and had no home, and my mother took her in. So she lived with us, and she became part of the family. So when she
Now,
married,
who was this?
this was, I'd have to think of her name, but she was very lovely. We all liked her very much. Was married in our home. My mother gave her a lovely wedding. And then that's when she said, now this is what I want to do to all of you girls, providing you don't run away and get married. But she didn't live to see that day.
There were other friends, so many prominent people that grew up in your neighborhood who became prominent in Pittsburgh and in Pennsylvania. I can remember Mother talking about different people that grew up in your neighborhood and went to school with you. But the one person that I remember was Stell Hoke and Frank Ingham. Two
Yes,
people.
they were friends.
Her name was Frances Ingham.
That's right. The Hokes and my mother were very, very close friends. They were my mother's closest friends, the Hokes. Although Mrs. Hoke was much older than my mother, my mother was more on the age of her daughters.
But Stell
like
Hoke
Stella
was
and
one
Lyde,
of her.
And Lil. There was
Lil.
Lil was the eldest.
Well, then, how did you come to know Frank Ingham through Stell Hoke?
That's right,
And
because they were very close friends.
They were close friends.
And the Inghams were prominent people.
And she was related to the Hines family.
That's right.
Because I remember meeting Mr. Hines through her when I was a little girl. Well, anyway, we're glad to have you visiting here with us now, and we hope you'll return for many more visits.
Thank you.